Hey guys, welcome back to my sewing room. I'm Kelly and you found me here on Pick and Stitches, and today we're going to be sewing month one of the Dragon Fruit block of the month. This is the sew along from the Fat Quarter Shop. It's using all Tula Pinks fabrics and a lot of foundation paper piecing, and I cannot wait to show you guys how cute and easy this whole thing is going to be. Okay, so we're going to be making these 5 blocks this month. The center block we're only going to make 4 of. The outer 4 are all the same block. It's just going to be different colorways. And old dogs and new tricks and all the things. I really kind of had to think through what fabric I was going to place where, how I wanted to organize them on my design board. So I hope some of these tips and tricks will help you guys. But all in all, this was really fun. It's the right amount of work to do each month. Like you kind of look forward to doing it. I definitely love foundation paper piecing, but it is not something that I want to do like all day, every day. So this is perfect. And I'm so excited to be working on it with you. Okay, guys, so this is month one. I've got all my stuff in this box. I'm even keeping my book in here. The one thing that doesn't fit in the box is this big 12-inch block paper. It's just a little bit too big. I feel like this is like a stationary box, but I don't know if they make them in a bigger size, but we'll see if I can't find something. Otherwise, it can just go in my drawer. It's big enough I'll be able to find it. These were what I had left over after I cut all of my shapes for this month. I'm not certain if we're going to be using these in months to come, so I'm just going to keep it all together. Once I finish this month's blocks, I'm going to put them all back into a baggie that say month one on them, and then we'll keep them and store them all in here. These are my other dragon fruit blocks that we're making today. So, yeah, let's jump right on in.
Okay, so we're going to be making 4 of these log cabin blocks. And what I noticed as I started making my test blocks was really more than anything, you just need to find a way to organize it for your brain. And if there's anything I've learned homeschooling 4 kids is that everybody's brain works completely different. So you have to lay it out in a way that makes sense to you. So I tried a couple of different options. When I first started cutting out the pattern, I pulled my paper out and I cut out my blocks to attach it to, and then I pulled my pages and I looked at the pages to make sure that these were going to coordinate mostly with the light dark. So here we've got 2 different colors of the darker color, and then at least our background fabric is all the same. So that wasn't too bad. But as I started to kind of build this out, I just did my center block. 1 is here, then 2 was over here, and then I kind of built it out so that each one kind of mirrors that side. And I thought that was going to be really easy to use and to sew out. But what I found was I kept having to refer back as I was sewing it in a way that was just kind of confusing to my brain. So after I cut it, and on about the second or third one, I kind of went back through and reorganized it. So I initially had them on that block even too, laid out just like this. And then I went back through and I said, okay, now I've got my paper, I've got my picture, but I'm going to put block 1. And then this is 2 and 3, 4 and 5. And so they also kind of mirror each other. So 4 and 5 are green. And then I know I'm going to do the background. And then I'm going to do opposite of the green for 8 and 9. So I kind of lined them up that way. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So you've just got to get it organized in a way that suits your brain, because that was kind of the most challenging part. And then other than that, it's just the standard foundation paper piecing method. So I'm going to roll through that for anybody who is interested in kind of seeing the way I like to do it. I don't think I do anything special, but you never know. So I'm going to go ahead and take my 3 remaining papers and I'm going to fold them all at the same time. Get some of these extras out of the way. So I do like to use this Add a Quarter Plus. This is the same one that I talked about the other day in the square and a square. You can see it's kind of got that lip on it. So that'll help you add 1/4 of an inch. And then this other side over here is like beveled and skinny. So you can use it to press your papers. So basically I'm going to take that whole stack and just kind of give it a gentle crease on all the lines. This doesn't have to be super perfect. It's just giving me a starting point, because once we start working on this, we're going to be looking at the back of the papers a bit. And so it'll help me identify where those lines are. when I'm trying to line up my fabric. And then we'll sew on the side with the numbers. Okay, so then what we're going to do is take our papers, flip them over upside down, which really feels completely wrong to me. And then we're going to get our glue stick. These little centers are quite small, so you really do want to make sure that you are keeping them in place. So we're going to go right side up. And I'm going to go ahead and do these two. I really hoped I could fussy cut that one, but it's so much smaller than that block that it's probably not going to show up as well, but we'll try it anyways. Okay, so you want to press those on really well. And then you're just going to trim these up. So first we're going to sew on piece 2. So I want to look at where piece 2 is. I'm going to use that beveled edge to fold my fabric and, fold my paper. And then I'm just going to trim up that side. So then I'm going to set it on my machine because I know it's ready to sew. I'll do the same thing on these other two. Now see, because I was trying to fussy cut that, I didn't even get it to where it lines up on the two. So that's what I get for trying to be fancy pants. I just put the glue in the wrong spot. But that's why you just double check things. Let's try that again. All right, so we'll find our 2 line. And the thing I love about all of this paper piecing is it's kind of flawless. Like you don't have to be super precise on anything except for sewing on the line on the paper and keeping your original blocks from moving. So sometimes it can be a little bit challenging to hold it the right size when you get ready to put it through the machine. So then if you're doing your blocks in this order, I'm going to grab this first white block and then we'll move over to the machine. Okay, so I've got my snips and I've got my little roller because I do like to use those. And this is probably the hardest attachment to make because it's not a whole lot of fabric to hold on to. It's probably worse on the Courthouse step. So you want to line up your fabric so it's going to be with that edge you just cut, and then you're going to hold it. I've heard some people pin it. I haven't had any luck with that because I find that the pins shift it too much or my hand gets in the way. So then I'm going to drop my needle just in front of that line. I like to sew a little bit before and a little bit after the line. And I do have my stitch length at like a 1.5, 1.25, somewhere in there. So I've sewn from just above the line to just below the line, and we'll do that for all 3 of these. Would be 4 if you were starting from scratch. And it's just really important that you hold that still so that it doesn't move. We'll do our last one. And you got to be kind of careful when you're pushing it through like that because sometimes that piece will hang up on your feed dogs and it might shift your piece. You just want to make sure it doesn't shift underneath your fingers. Okay, so let's head back over to our pressing and cutting area. Okay, so I do have this roller and I do like to use that sometimes to just kind of speed things along over at the machine, but you're going to press all of these seams open. You're going to want to do that with a dry iron. This paper doesn't really like a lot of seam, but if you have a little seam, it's not the end of the world. And on this method, you can't press these open, but I'm more of a love to nest my seams anyway, so. Okay, so now that we've got all of those done, we're going to just come back over here and snip on the next one. So we just added piece 2. Now we're going to add piece 3. So I'm going to put my ruler right on that line because I stitched a little bit past it. I do have to kind of pull that stitch up a little bit, but I feel like that's more secure. And I did go ahead, for those of you who've watched the channel for a while, I've been sewing with that 60 weight glide thread and I love it. But for this, I did switch to a 40 weight. I feel like it just makes the paper tear a little bit easier. So I also like a cotton 50 weight, but I've just gotten spoiled by not having so much lint in my bobbin case. So I'm trying the 40 weight glide and I'm liking it just fine. Okay, so we'll trim all those. Oh. Now we'll grab our piece number 3 and we'll head back to the machine. Okay, and so this is just going to be more of the same. So we're going to get our piece 3, I'll line up with that edge we just trimmed, and then flip it over. So a little bit in front of and a little bit past the line. And at the end of this process, if your machine throws a really long thread at the beginning, you're going to have some threads that are kind of dancing all over the place. So I do like to trim those up as I go if I see them, but you don't have to do that. Okay, so we'll press it. And then we'll trim up our next line. So now we're going to trim line 4. And the Courthouse step is kind of nice because you can do them 2 at a time. These you kind of have to go around the world 1 at a time. And I noticed on the Fat Quarter Shop that Kimberly cut hers a little bit larger than the instructions. That definitely gives you a little bit more wiggle room. And I'm guessing that since she did that, there's probably enough fabric to do that. I feel like she was adding like 1/4 of an inch to most of her pieces, but I don't find that I always need to do that unless it's something really fiddly. Okay. So now we'll grab our piece 4s. So that's moving into the polka dot for this one. Head back over to the machine. We'll line it up, not too. Okay. Press and trim. And now we'll go in and trim line 5. So once you kind of get into the rhythm with this and you know where your color placement is, it's really pretty straightforward and easy. I just found that when I had them laid out the other way on my block, my brain just didn't know which piece to go to next. So that was what was confusing. So as long as you find a way that makes sense to you, I think that will be your biggest helper. Whoops. I don't know what I'm doing. Talking too much. Okay, so we'll grab our next green ones off the design board. Okay, now we'll press them and ruin our stacks. Okay, now we're on to 6. So we'll clean these up, get our next background fabric round. Okay, so we'll grab our next round of backgrounds. We're almost halfway there, guys. Okay, guys, I forgot to move camera angles. So you know the drill by now, though. We're just going to pull back that paper, press it, pull it back, trim it up, and we're on to the next round. Okay. Give these guys a quick press, a trim, and then we're back onto our 2 pieces of the yellow rainbow. Okay, so now we'll grab our 3 and our next round. So as you can see, there is a lot of back and forth. So if you were doing these all 3 different colors at the same time, all 4 different colors, I guess, then you would have a lot less back and forth. If you can keep all that straight, I think that would be great. I just didn't want to do that in this video to you guys. I don't know why that one is so long, but it's one to roll over funky. Okay, so we're kind of getting a nice little pile here. So there is a little bit more trimming that you're going to be doing on this block than, you know, some of your more standard ways to make blocks. So there is a bit more waste, but I just, the precision that I get with this is so much better. And see, that folded funny when I was ironing it, but I knew it was far enough down it wouldn't matter. I'm going to trim that off. I guess I probably cut those pieces out longer than they needed to be. Okay. So now we'll grab our last rainbows. And we're on to piece 9. Okay, so now we're on to our next background fabric. And it's just more of this kind of working in the round. All right, then we'll press these open. Now we're trimming on to number 11. Oops. And if you don't have too much to cut off, that's okay. This is just getting that excess of that 1/4 of an inch off. I mean, you want to have a 1/4 of an inch, but if it's a scant 1/4, that's okay. All right. And we'll take our last 3 here. Last 3 of our background. Now we're down to our last two pieces of our color fabric, which is going to be this green polka dot. Okay. We'll grab our shorter polka dot. Okay, so this is the last time that we're going to use this add a quarter plus to trim down. Our next trim will be our final block size. Okay, so we'll grab that last block. Okay, guys, so now we've sewn all the seams. All that we have left here is we're going to trim this block to size. So I like to use the exact ruler, but if you don't have that, you can always just measure it. Our finished, well, the size we're going to trim to is a 4.5. So if you look at the way that my shape is, it's really great in the middle, but like that's not square, but it's not a worry because we're going to trim all that off. So if you feel like things are getting out of line, as long as you've got this section of the front covered, you're good. So we're just going to trim this on all four sides to be this 4.5. And if you're wondering, especially on one of these paper pieces where you're doing a whole lot of cutting on smaller pieces, I do like to use this smaller mat so that when I'm trimming, I'm not wearing out my bigger expensive mats. I'm just kind of doing it all here. And then when that little tiny one gets worn out, it's really easy to replace. Because sometimes you have big, huge things that you need to cut, but most of the time it's not that large. You guys, these are so cute. And I really love these fabrics. They are definitely bright and vibrant, but they're a little toned down than some of the hero prints. I'm kind of a little bit old-fashioned and I'm trying to branch out, try some new things. And this, I think, is a good transition. It's certainly fun. It feels young. All right. So these are our 3 blocks. Remember, I already had one made when we started. Then you're just going to pull off your papers. It's that easy. So if you've got a house full of children like I do, they kind of like to do this, but I'm just going to fold it along those edges and pull it off. It is a little bit harder to pull off than like the triangles on a roll, but it's really, if you use that 90 needle and you drop your stitch length down, I think it's really pretty easy. And even that 60 glide came out pretty easy. I didn't like when I was folding back the edges to make the 1/4 inch seams, it didn't want to pull through the paper as easily. Like it kind of ripped the paper a little bit more, but it was okay. All right, so that's all the paper off of one. You'll do that for all your pieces. And then we'll do this in our 4 colorways, and that'll be our first 16 blocks. No, our first 12 blocks. We still have one other pattern that we have to sew out. It's the Courthouse step pattern. So those 4 blocks are going to use a little bit different technique. And to be quite honest, when I was cutting this one out, my brain was like really on overload until I started looking at it like, okay, these are like a frame. And so what I did is I took one and I colored it. I grabbed the kids' matte pencils and I colored it. Like, was it going to be a green square or was it going to be a yellow square? Because I just wanted to make sure that I cut everything out right. You guys may not need to do that. I get sometimes I have too many distractions around here. So I like to show you some of my tips and tricks that kind of help me keep my brain on straight. So we're basically going to do the same thing with these guys. we're going to crease our pages. And then we'll grab our glue stick and glue on piece number 1. I did keep these oriented on the design board in kind of my more original format. I don't know if these would make sense to reorganize as well, but for whatever reason, this one didn't mess with my brain because I was making kind of an all the way around pattern. It was just on the cutting instructions, because on the cutting instructions, this would say, let's see, if we're looking at the cutting instructions, piece 4 and piece 5 are dark, but piece 2 and piece 3 were light. And in our pattern, we want those 4 to be the same color. So that was why I think my brain was just hosed. Okay. So we'll do piece 1. We make sure I actually do it on the square 1. We'll start with our yellows. All right. And then from here, it's pretty much going to be the same drill. We'll start trimming, get everything back where it's supposed to go. So we'll just look for this line 2. Now, because of this block being slightly different, see, I don't even have to trim that. Piece 2 and piece 3 can go on at the same time. So I am still going to kind of refer to that part of, as I'm putting it together, piece 2 and piece 3 can go on at the same time. You'll just have to fold the fabric out of your way. So that felt like it was really big on one side, and it kind of was, but I just wanted to flip it over before I cut it and make sure I still had enough to cover that whole one square. Because what if I glued it in the wrong spot? That can happen. Okay, so we'll go over to the machine. We're going to grab these 2 smallest blocks from the center, and we're going to put them on both sides. So these are really small, and I have had them slide on me before. So you definitely want to make sure that you've got a good grip and that your feed dogs aren't going to interfere, and that you don't let go until that needle is through the paper. It's just because they're so small. We'll do the other side. I'm just going to fold that out of the way because I want to make sure it doesn't accidentally get caught in this next seam. And I'm going to do a really good job of holding it again because that's that same small size. And that's where I want to kind of push it with this finger. And that's, I think, how the fastest and easiest way to get it misaligned. And then we'll finger press this one. And we'll do that for all 3 or all 4. And so you just want to kind of look at them when you pull it around to the back side and make sure it didn't accidentally slip. And see, I pushed that one around a lot, so I just want to make sure that I didn't get it, and I did. So I don't know if you guys can see this, but the green fabric has slipped down like almost 1/4 of an inch. Yep. So I could kind of feel that as I pushed it into the machine. It would have probably been okay because I have enough coverage there, but I don't want to have to start over. And I love this shorter stitch length, but once you stitch it in, if you make a mistake, you're probably just going to go cut more fabric because it's really hard to pull those out and not tear everything apart. Although I will say it is easier with the polyester thread than it is with the cotton. Okay, so now we'll go press these and then trim 2 sides. So as you can see, this 2 at a time or 2 sides at a time is going to go quite a lot faster just because we have fewer back and forths. Now we can trim 2 sides at a time. And I'm going to transition and just do this one block for you. Okay. So here we've got our first 2 pieces down. So I'm going to look at my block here. I know I want to make it green all the way around this yellow block. So I'm going to pick my next piece. These are the same size. So I could pick one from each, or I could pick 1, 2 from the same stack. So then we'll go back over to the machine. Okay. So I've got our 2 pieces, and we're going to do the exact same thing we did on this last round. Right sides together, flip it over, hold. This is still pretty narrow here in the middle, so I'm going to trim all these threads that are making me crazy already. Okay. So I'm going to finger press it open because I don't want to catch it in this next seam. So this is where I like to use that little roller, because I'm doing this without going over to the ironing station. Not that I'm trimming from that, but okay. So we'll flip it over. All right, we'll head back to the ironing board. Okay, so that one's trimmed all the way around. And now we're going to pick our next round of our yellows. And these are the smaller of the next round. And we're just going to attach that to 6 and 7. Doesn't matter if you do one or the other first. And because they're so much further apart now, you don't have to press in between. You can just leave the flap down because you're not going to sew over that. Okay, so now we'll press this guy. We'll grab our trim it, and then we'll grab our next yellow. So we're going to go for 8 and 9 this time. Okay. I'll flip it back to my board. So I just used these 2. Now I'm going to use the top and bottom. We'll attach 1 on each side. Now that they're bigger, I find that they don't slip as much as when they're tiny. But still shouldn't be too haphazard. And we don't have to fold that one back because we have plenty of room. Okay. We'll set the seams, press it back. Now we're on to our final round. So we're going to have 2 that we do now and 2. Put on 2 of our greens, press and cut 2 of our greens, and we are done. And that is the difference between Courthouse steps and a log cabin. So I like the log cabin block a lot too, but it is kind of nice when you can do these 2 at a time. So we'll go back to our pattern here. We're going to be doing, let's see, 10 and 11. So we're going to take these outer pieces. Set our seam. So by now, I'm sure you guys have this routine down. And again, for me, it's really just about getting organized so that you can see what you're working with and that you don't sew something onto the wrong spot. And if you do, it's not the end of the world. I feel like there was a very generous amount of fabric with this. It's one of the things I really love about the Fat Quarter Shop is that they don't leave you in the lurch. I don't know why I'm being so mean to this paper today. I'm not usually having trouble like this. Okay, so now we'll take our last two and we'll attach them there and there. Oops, not the wrong side of the fabric. Now we've got our final press, and then we will use our square to trim this time. Okay, so I think that I really like the results. It just feels incredibly uniform. I did starch my fabrics. I think I mentioned that. But the paper is pretty good at keeping you from stretching your fabrics anyways. And then after I take off all my papers, I do like to give it one final press and leave it under a clapper for a while. It's usually kind of the way I exit the sewing room. You know, some people like clean up their station, put it all away. I always leave something under the clappers. But I do try to clean up my station. It doesn't look like this hot mess when I leave. So again, these papers are a little bit more fiddly to take out, but I really like this project. We've got 16 blocks this month, which is quite a few, but they're smaller. And you can totally make all of these. And then while you're sitting down in the evening watching TV, just kind of pick at them while you're having your evening entertainment. All right. Okay, guys, so these are our blocks for this month. Okay, so these are the patterns of the blocks that we're going to be making this month. We've got these four, and then we've got our one that's kind of unique. So total of 16 blocks. It's not a bad month, and I'm excited to have been able to sew this one out with you guys.
Okay, guys, that is a wrap on month one of our dragon fruit quilt along. Again, this is all Tula Pink's fabrics. I'm going to try to find out if the Fat Quarter Shop is going to sell these patterns individually because I know not everybody is into the super vibrant print on all of these quilt patterns. But I think this is a fun transition, way to get out of your comfort zone and try something new. And I honestly think that this is going to be a really fun quilt to make out of so many different fabrics. But I think it is stunning in the color ways that they have prepared for us with all the different fabrics. So if you'd like watching this tutorial or any of my other unboxing videos, it would help me out so much if you would hit that like and subscribe button. And until then, guys, I will see you next time.